Emma Carter stepped into the office of Crestwood Innovations on a chilly Monday morning, her presence barely registering among the sea of hurried employees rushing to their desks. She wore a plain blouse paired with simple slacks, her dark hair tied neatly in a low ponytail. Her appearance was unremarkable. Nothing about her screamed important. To everyone around her, she looked like just another new hire, someone who might handle administrative tasks or perhaps assist one of the senior managers. The office buzzed with energy as people chatted over coffee cups, exchanged updates about weekend plans, and typed furiously on their keyboards. Emma moved quietly through the chaos, clutching a leather notebook close to her chest. No one paid much attention to her as she signed in at the reception desk and took a seat in the waiting area. When an HR representative finally arrived to escort her to her workspace, he introduced himself briefly but didn't seem particularly interested in making small talk. Emma had chosen this approach deliberately. She wasn't here to make waves. Not yet anyway. What no one knew, not even the HR rep guiding her down the hallway, was that Emma owned Crestwood Innovations. The company had been passed down to her after her father's sudden passing just 2 months earlier. Instead of announcing herself as CEO right away, Emma decided to spend 3 months working undercover in the office. She wanted to see how things really worked, to understand the inner dynamics of the company without the bias that came with being labeled the boss. Her plan was risky, but it made sense to her. If she walked in as CEO immediately, people would treat her differently, deferentially, cautiously, or worse, insincerely. By blending in as an ordinary employee, she could observe everything: how teams interacted, who contributed meaningfully, and who only cared about looking good in front of management. Most importantly, she hoped to identify any toxic behaviors lurking beneath the surface. After all, a company's success depended not just on profits but also on its people. As the HR rep led her to a small desk tucked away in a corner of the open-plan office, Emma couldn't help but notice the subtle hierarchy already evident in the layout. The more senior employees occupied spacious cubicles near large windows, while newer hires were crammed together in less desirable spots. Her own desk was far from the action, situated near the supply closet where printers hummed constantly. It wasn't glamorous, but it suited her purpose perfectly. From this vantage point, she could watch and listen without drawing unnecessary attention. Her first task was straightforward: sorting through stacks of paperwork left behind by the previous occupant of the desk. As she sifted through invoices, memos, and outdated training manuals, Emma began piecing together the rhythm of the office. Employees drifted past her desk throughout the day, some chatting animatedly, others buried in their phones or laptops. A few glanced curiously at her but quickly lost interest when they realized she wasn't anyone noteworthy. By lunchtime, Emma ventured to the break room to grab a cup of coffee. The room was lively, filled with clusters of coworkers laughing and debating everything from sports scores to upcoming deadlines. She stood off to the side, sipping her drink quietly, when a woman with sharp features and perfectly styled hair entered the room. This was Sarah, a senior coordinator known for her commanding presence and biting wit. She scanned the room before settling her gaze on Emma. "Well, well," Sarah said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Looks like we've got fresh meat." Her tone was teasing, but there was an edge to it that made Emma pause. "What's your name again?" "Emma," she replied softly, meeting Sarah's gaze steadily despite feeling a flicker of unease. "Emma," Sarah repeated, rolling the name around in her mouth as if testing its weight. "Cute. You'll fit right in here, as long as you don't mind staying invisible." A few people chuckled nervously, unsure whether Sarah was joking or issuing a warning. Emma forced a polite smile, refusing to let the comment rattle her. Over the next few days, Emma continued observing the office culture. She noticed cliques forming naturally with certain individuals holding sway over others. Sarah reigned supreme in her department, doling out both praise and criticism with equal flair. Meanwhile, Greg, a tall man with a booming voice and an air of superiority, dominated meetings, often interrupting junior staff members mid-sentence. His favorite phrase seemed to be, "Let me explain this to you," delivered with a patronizing smirk that made Emma's stomach churn. Despite the growing tension, Emma remained patient. She understood that her role for now was to blend in, to absorb information without reacting impulsively. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was brewing beneath the surface. Little did she know, her quiet resolve would soon be put to the test in ways she hadn't anticipated. The bullying started subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. It wasn't the kind of outright aggression that left bruises or raised voices. Instead, it was a slow drip of condescension and exclusion that seeped into Emma's daily life at Crestwood. Innovations. At first, she tried to brush it off, telling herself that maybe she was overthinking things. But as the days turned into weeks, the behavior became impossible to ignore. Sarah, the self-proclaimed office queen, took particular delight in singling Emma out. One morning, as Emma walked into the office wearing a navy blue cardigan and a pair of black trousers, Sarah smirked and said loudly enough for nearby coworkers to hear, "Oh, Emma, you really need to step up your wardrobe game. We're not running a charity shop here, you know." A few people chuckled nervously, while others avoided eye contact altogether. Emma simply smiled politely, pretending the comment didn't bother her, but inside she felt a pang of frustration. She had chosen her outfit carefully, opting for something professional yet understated, not because she lacked style, but because she wanted to remain inconspicuous. Greg, the senior manager known for his domineering attitude, wasn't much better. During team meetings, he often dismissed Emma's contributions with a wave of his hand or a curt remark like, "That's cute, but let's stick to realistic ideas." Once, when Emma suggested streamlining the client onboarding process by creating a shared digital template, Greg rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath, "Leave the strategy to the experts, okay?" The jab stung, but Emma kept her composure, nodding silently as if she agreed with him. She knew better than to argue. After all, revealing her true identity would ruin the entire purpose of her undercover mission. What made the bullying even more insidious was how casually it spread throughout the office. Other employees, either too intimidated by Sarah and Greg or eager to curry favor with them, joined in without hesitation. Some whispered behind Emma's back, speculating about why she'd been hired in the first place. Others openly mocked her reserved demeanor, labeling her too quiet or awkward. One coworker even went so far as to call her the ghost, because she seemed to glide through the office unnoticed, rarely speaking unless spoken to. Despite the mounting hostility, Emma refused to let it derail her focus. She continued observing everything, the way Sarah manipulated her team with fear and flattery, the way Greg prioritized appearances over actual results. She noticed how certain employees thrived under pressure while others wilted, how some departments worked seamlessly together while others operated in silos. Every interaction, no matter how small, added another piece to the puzzle she was trying to solve. But the bullying didn't stop there. It escalated in ways that tested Emma's patience and resolve. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk reviewing a report, a group of coworkers gathered nearby to discuss an upcoming project. When Emma attempted to contribute her thoughts, they abruptly changed the subject, laughing and chatting about unrelated topics as though she weren't even there. Another time, someone accidentally spilled coffee on her notes during a meeting, leaving her scrambling to salvage what she could. Each incident chipped away at her confidence, but Emma reminded herself why she was enduring it all. This wasn't just about her, it was about uncovering the truth and setting things right. One particularly humiliating moment came when Sarah decided to organize a team-building exercise. The activity involved pairing up employees to complete challenges, but when it was Emma's turn to be assigned a partner, Sarah announced with a smug grin, "I guess we'll have to put Emma with, oh wait, never mind. Maybe she can sit this one out. She probably wouldn't understand the rules anyway." The room erupted in awkward laughter, and Emma felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Still, she forced herself to laugh along, masking her hurt with a light-hearted shrug. Inside, however, she vowed to remember every slight, every insult, every act of cruelty. They would all come into play later. As the weeks dragged on, Emma began documenting the bullying in detail. She jotted down names, dates, and specific incidents in her leather notebook, careful to include as much evidence as possible. She also started paying closer attention to the dynamics between Sarah, Greg, and their respective teams. What she discovered shocked her. For instance, Greg had been cutting corners on client projects, rushing deadlines to make himself look good even though it compromised quality. Meanwhile, Sarah's micromanaging tendencies stifled creativity within her department, leading to missed opportunities and low morale among her subordinates. Emma realized that the bullying wasn't just personal, it was systemic. Sarah and Greg ruled the office with an iron fist, using fear and intimidation to maintain control. Anyone who dared challenge them risked becoming a target themselves, which explained why most employees stayed silent, even those who weren't. Directly bullied often turned a blind eye, unwilling to rock the boat. It was a toxic cycle, one that Emma was determined to break. In quieter moments, Emma allowed herself to reflect on the situation. She thought about her father, who had built Crestwood Innovations from the ground up with hard work and integrity. He had always believed in treating employees fairly, fostering a culture of trust and collaboration. Seeing the company reduced to this, a breeding ground for negativity and abuse, made her heart ache, but it also fueled her determination. She knew she couldn't fix everything overnight, but she could start by exposing the truth and holding people accountable. By the end of her second month at the office, Emma had gathered more than enough evidence to justify taking action. Yet she still bided her time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She understood that revenge wasn't the goal, it was justice. And justice required patience, precision, and proof. As she watched Sarah and Greg strut around the office, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Soon they would learn, and when they did, nothing would ever be the same again. As the weeks rolled on, Emma began to subtly shift gears. She had endured enough of the bullying and exclusion to understand the toxic dynamics at play, but now it was time to fight back. Not with anger or confrontation, but with intelligence and strategy. Her plan wasn't just about revenge, it was about dismantling the rotten foundation Sarah and Greg had built while proving that she was far more capable than anyone gave her credit for. Emma's first move came during a department-wide meeting where Greg was presenting his latest project update. He stood at the front of the room, pacing back and forth like a self-appointed general, boasting about how he had streamlined operations to meet an aggressive deadline. His tone was arrogant, dismissive even, as if no one else in the room could possibly grasp the complexity of what he was saying. But Emma noticed something critical. The numbers didn't add up. Greg proudly claimed that his team had completed a major client proposal ahead of schedule. But Emma, who had spent hours poring over the same documents during her downtime, knew better. The proposal was riddled with errors, shortcuts, and missing details that would almost certainly lead to problems down the line. When Greg opened the floor for questions, most employees stayed silent, too afraid to challenge him. But Emma saw her opening. "Actually," she said calmly, raising her hand, "I think there might be a few areas worth revisiting before we finalize this." The room went still. Everyone turned to look at her, some curious, others horrified. Greg narrowed his eyes, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "What do you mean?" he snapped, his voice dripping with condescension. "Do you have any idea how much effort went into this?" "I do," Emma replied evenly, unfazed by his tone. "And I think it's great work overall, but I noticed a couple of gaps in the data analysis section, and the timeline seems a bit rushed. If we don't address those issues now, the client might push back later." For a moment, Greg looked flustered, unsure how to respond. Then, regaining his composure, he shot back, "Well, maybe if you'd been paying attention during the planning phase instead of hiding in your little corner, you'd know why we made those decisions." Emma smiled faintly, refusing to take the bait. Instead, she pulled out a printed copy of the proposal and flipped to the relevant pages. "Here, for example," she continued, pointing to a specific section, "the cost projections don't align with the supplier quotes we received last month, and here," she highlighted another part, "the deliverable dates seem unrealistic given the current workload. Am I missing something?" The room buzzed with murmurs as other employees leaned forward, intrigued. Greg stammered, trying to defend himself, but his arguments fell flat under Emma's calm, factual delivery. By the end of the meeting, several people were nodding in agreement, including one of the senior managers who quietly suggested revisiting the proposal before sending it off to the client. For the first time, Greg looked genuinely rattled and humiliated. But Emma wasn't done yet. Over the next few days, she started inserting herself into conversations and projects where she knew Sarah and Greg's weaknesses would be exposed. In Sarah's department, for instance, morale was at an all-time low due to her relentless micromanaging. Employees felt stifled, unable to contribute creatively or take ownership of their tasks. Emma seized the opportunity to offer subtle suggestions during brainstorming sessions, framing them as collaborative ideas rather than criticisms of Sarah's leadership. One afternoon, when Sarah dismissed a junior employee's innovative marketing concept with a curt "that'll never work," Emma spoke up. "Actually, I think it has potential," she said, turning to the young woman with a warm smile. "Could you walk us through how you'd execute it? Sometimes fresh perspectives are exactly what we need." The junior employee lit up, eager to share her thoughts. As the discussion unfolded, others chimed in, building on the idea until it evolved into something truly impressive. Even Sarah couldn't deny its merit, though she tried to claim partial credit for inspiring it. Still, the damage was done. Her authority had been challenged in front of the entire team, and everyone could see that Emma's approach yielded better results than Sarah's domineering style. Meanwhile, Emma continued documenting every misstep, every failure, and every act of negligence committed by Sarah and Greg. She compiled emails, reports, and performance metrics that painted a damning picture of their incompetence. Yet she did so discreetly, ensuring that her actions remained undetectable. To the rest of the office, she was still just a quiet, unassuming co-worker who occasionally piped up with useful insights. No one suspected that she was gathering ammunition for a reckoning. Her efforts began to pay off in unexpected ways. Upper management, who had initially overlooked Emma as insignificant, started taking notice of her contributions. One day, after she successfully mediated a conflict between two rival teams, the vice president of operations pulled her aside. "You've got a knack for problem solving," he remarked approvingly. "Keep it up. We need more people like you around here." Emma nodded modestly, but inside she felt a surge of satisfaction. Her strategy was working, slowly but surely. She was earning respect and credibility without revealing her true identity. At the same time, Sarah and Greg's reputations were crumbling. Their colleagues began questioning their decisions, and whispers of dissatisfaction rippled through the office. The once unshakable duo found themselves on shaky ground, though they remained oblivious to the fact that Emma was orchestrating their downfall. Still, Emma knew she couldn't let her guard down. The closer she got to exposing the truth, the more desperate Sarah and Greg became to maintain their dominance. They doubled down on their bullying tactics, hoping to intimidate her into submission. One morning, Emma arrived at her desk to find a sticky note stuck to her computer screen. It read, "Know your place, or leave." Another time, someone accidentally deleted important files from her shared drive, forcing her to recreate hours of work. Each incident only strengthened her resolve. By the third month, Emma had reached a tipping point. She had gathered enough evidence to justify drastic action, but she needed a dramatic moment to unveil the truth. That moment came during a company-wide presentation led by Greg, who was showcasing his latest achievements. As he droned on about his supposed successes, Emma slipped a USB drive containing her findings onto the podium. When Greg clicked to the next slide, the tension in the conference room was palpable as Greg stood at the front, confidently presenting his latest accomplishments to the entire company. The large screen behind him displayed graphs, charts, and glowing testimonials from clients, most of which Emma knew were either exaggerated or outright fabricated. Employees sat in rows, some scribbling notes, others scrolling through their phones discreetly. No one suspected that this routine presentation would take a dramatic turn. Greg clicked to the next slide, expecting it to show another set of impressive metrics. Instead, the screen flickered and suddenly an entirely different image appeared. a document detailing Greg's repeated failures over the past year. There were screenshots of emails where he had ignored warnings about missed deadlines, photos of client feedback criticizing subpar work, and even internal memos highlighting budget overruns caused by his reckless decision-making. The room fell silent as people stared at the screen, confused and shocked. "What the hell is this?" Greg barked, fumbling with the projector controls. His face turned red as he frantically tried to switch slides, but the document remained, stubbornly frozen on the screen. Murmurs rippled through the audience as employees leaned forward, reading the damning evidence with growing disbelief. Emma watched calmly from her seat near the back of the room, her expression neutral. She had anticipated this exact moment, the culmination of weeks of careful planning and observation. As Greg struggled to regain control, she stood up slowly, drawing everyone's attention. "I think I can explain," she said, her voice steady and clear. All eyes turned to her, some curious, others wary. Greg glared at her, his jaw clenched tightly. "Who did this?" he demanded, pointing accusingly at the screen. "This isn't funny." "It's not supposed to be funny," Emma replied, stepping closer to the podium. "It's the truth. And if you'd spent less time bullying your colleagues and more time focusing on your actual responsibilities, maybe you wouldn't find yourself in this position right now." The room erupted into whispers. Greg looked like he'd been punched, in the gut, while Sarah, who had been sitting smugly in the front row, visibly stiffened, sensing that something bigger was unfolding. Emma continued, her tone firm but composed. "For months, I've watched how this office operates. I've seen brilliant ideas dismissed because they didn't come from the right person. I've seen hard-working employees belittled and excluded simply for trying to do their jobs. And I've seen leaders like Greg and Sarah prioritize their egos over the success of this company." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "But what really bothers me isn't just their behavior. It's the fact that no one held them accountable for it." She pulled out a folder from her bag and placed it on the table beside Greg, who was too stunned to react. "Inside this folder is proof of everything I'm saying. Emails, reports, performance reviews. All of it points to one thing. Greg and Sarah have been failing this company, and they've been doing it for a long time." Sarah finally found her voice, standing abruptly. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, her cheeks flushed with anger. "You don't know anything about running a business, Emma. You're just some low-level hire who thinks she can stir up trouble." Emma smiled faintly, unfazed by Sarah's outburst. "Actually," she said, turning to face the crowd, "there's something you should all know about me." She took a deep breath, then delivered the line she'd rehearsed countless times, in her mind. "My name isn't just Emma Carter. I'm Emma Carter, the owner of Crestwood Innovations." The room went completely silent. For a moment it felt as though time itself had stopped. Employees exchanged incredulous glances, their mouths hanging open in disbelief. Greg and Sarah froze, their faces pale with shock. Even the vice president of operations, who had praised Emma just weeks earlier, looked as though he'd been struck by lightning. "You... what?" Greg stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's right," Emma said, her tone calm but authoritative. "I inherited this company after my father passed away 2 months ago. Instead of announcing myself as CEO immediately, I chose to spend 3 months working alongside all of you, to see how things really operate, to understand the culture, and to identify areas that need improvement. Unfortunately, what I discovered was worse than I expected." She gestured toward the screen, still displaying the incriminating document. "Greg, you've consistently prioritized speed over quality, cutting corners and jeopardizing our reputation with clients. Sarah, your department suffers from low morale because you micromanage and intimidate your team instead of empowering them. Together, you've created a toxic environment where people are afraid to speak up or innovate. That ends today." The room buzzed with murmurs as employees processed the bombshell revelation. Some looked guilty, realizing they'd contributed to the toxic culture by staying silent. Others glanced at Greg and Sarah with thinly veiled disgust, having suspected for years that something was wrong but lacking the courage to say so. Greg tried to salvage the situation, sputtering excuses and blaming others for his mistakes. "This isn't fair," he protested. "You can't just waltz in here and accuse us of—" "I'm not accusing you," Emma interrupted, her voice sharp enough to silence him. "I'm showing you. Every single piece of evidence in that folder is verifiable. If you want to deny it, go ahead. But I doubt anyone will believe you after this." Sarah, ever the opportunist, attempted to pivot. "Okay, fine," she said, forcing a brittle smile. "Maybe we made a few mistakes, but we're committed to improving. Give us another chance." Emma shook her head. "It's too late for second chances. Your actions have cost this company time, money, and trust. Effective immediately, both of you are terminated." She nodded toward the HR representative seated nearby, who quickly rose to escort Greg and Sarah out of the room. Neither put up much of a fight. They were too shell-shocked to resist. As the door closed behind them, the room remained eerily quiet. Employees avoided meeting Emma's gaze, unsure whether to feel ashamed, relieved, or impressed. Finally, the vice president broke the silence. "Ms. Carter," he began hesitantly, "on behalf of everyone here, I apologize for how you were treated. Clearly, we failed to recognize your potential and your authority." Emma nodded, appreciating the "Karzana, thank you," she said simply. "But let's be clear, this isn't about me. It's about creating a workplace where everyone feels valued and respected. Moving forward, I expect every single one of you to hold yourselves and each other accountable. Bullying, incompetence, and dishonesty will not be tolerated. Understood?" A chorus of nods and murmurs of agreement filled the room. For the first time in months, the atmosphere felt lighter, as though a heavy weight had been lifted. Employees exchanged hopeful glances, sensing the dawn of a new era for Crestwood Innovations. As the meeting adjourned, Emma lingered for a moment, watching as people filed out of the room. Some approached her to offer apologies or congratulations, while others hung back, clearly unsure how to act around their new boss. Emma greeted each person warmly, making it clear that she bore no grudges, only a desire to lead with integrity. Walking back to her desk later that day, Emma allowed herself a small smile. The hardest part was over, but she knew the real work was just beginning. Rebuilding trust, fostering collaboration, and transforming the company culture wouldn't happen overnight. Still, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had taken a stand against injustice, not just for herself, but for everyone who deserved better. And as she settled into her chair, ready to tackle the challenges ahead, she knew one thing for certain: change was possible. The days following Emma's dramatic reveal were a whirlwind of activity at Crestwood Innovations. News of her true identity spread like wildfire, sparking conversations in every corner of the office. Employees who had once dismissed her as just another hire now scrambled to piece together their impressions of her. Some felt guilty for not standing up to Sarah and Greg sooner, while others marveled at how Emma had managed to stay so composed under such difficult circumstances. The entire dynamic of the workplace shifted overnight. Emma wasted no time implementing changes. Her first order of business was addressing the toxic culture that had festered under Sarah and Greg's leadership. She called a company-wide meeting to outline her vision for a healthier, more inclusive environment. Standing confidently at the podium, she spoke with clarity and conviction, emphasizing values like respect, accountability, and collaboration. "I want this to be a place where everyone feels safe to share ideas, take risks, and grow," she told the room. "No one should have to endure bullying or discrimination to succeed here. If you see something wrong, say something. If you feel unheard, speak up. Together we can create a culture that reflects the best of who we are." Her words resonated deeply with many employees, especially those who had suffered silently under Sarah and Greg's reign. For the first time in years, people began to believe that change was possible, and that it started with them. Slowly but surely, they started holding each other accountable, calling out disrespectful behavior when they saw it, and supporting colleagues who needed help. It wasn't an instant transformation, but the seeds of progress were being planted. To reinforce these shifts, Emma introduced several new initiatives aimed at improving communication and teamwork. She launched weekly check-ins where employees could voice concerns or suggestions without fear of judgment. She also created cross-departmental task forces to encourage collaboration between teams that rarely interacted before. These small steps helped break down barriers and fostered a sense of unity across the company. One of the most impactful changes came in the form of leadership restructuring. Emma promoted deserving individuals who had been overlooked by Greg and Sarah, giving them roles that aligned with their strengths and ambitions. For example, Rachel, a junior marketer whose innovative ideas had been repeatedly shot down, was appointed head of the creative team. Her energy and enthusiasm quickly revitalized the department, leading to fresh campaigns that impressed both clients and upper management. At the same time, Emma made it clear that promotions would be based solely on merit moving forward. Gone were the days of favoritism and empty credentials. She demanded excellence from everyone, including herself. This policy earned her widespread respect, even from skeptics who initially doubted her ability to lead. Of course, not everyone welcomed the changes with open arms. A handful of employees struggled to adapt, clinging to old habits or resenting the loss of their former allies. Some grumbled about Emma's idealistic approach, claiming it was impractical in a competitive industry. But Emma refused to let negativity derail her efforts. She addressed resistance head-on, meeting privately with dissenters to listen to their concerns and explain her reasoning. More often than not, these conversations ended with mutual understanding, or at least a willingness to try. As weeks turned into months, the positive effects of Emma's reforms became undeniable. Productivity soared as employees embraced their newfound autonomy and support. Morale improved dramatically, with smiles replacing the tense silences that used to fill the office. Even client feedback reflected the internal shift. Satisfied customers praised Crestwood Innovations for its professionalism, creativity, and reliability. Emma's leadership style played a key role in this turnaround. Unlike Sarah and Greg, who ruled through fear and intimidation, Emma led with empathy and transparency. She made herself accessible to employees at all levels, regularly joining team meetings and participating in casual chats during lunch breaks. Her door was always open, whether someone needed advice, wanted to share an idea, or simply needed to vent. This hands-on approach earned her genuine loyalty, transforming her from a mysterious figure into a beloved leader. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Emma's journey was how she handled the aftermath of her confrontation with Sarah and Greg. Despite their cruel treatment of her, she chose not to harbor bitterness or seek revenge. Instead, she focused on healing the wounds they had inflicted not just on her but on the entire organization. During town hall meetings, she openly acknowledged the pain caused by their actions and encouraged employees to move forward together. "None of us are perfect," she said during one particularly heartfelt session. "We all make mistakes, and we all have moments when we fail to live up to our ideals. What matters is how we respond to those failures. Are we willing to learn, to grow, to do better next time? That's what defines us, not our past, but our potential." Her message struck a chord with many employees, inspiring them to reflect on their own behaviors and contributions. Some even reached out to apologize to colleagues they had wronged in the past, mending broken relationships and strengthening bonds within the team. By the end of her third month as CEO, Emma's impact on Crestwood Innovations was undeniable. The company wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Revenue increased, employee retention rates improved, and client satisfaction reached record highs. Most importantly, the toxic atmosphere that had plagued the office for years had been replaced by a spirit of optimism and camaraderie. Emma celebrated these milestones quietly, preferring to focus on the road ahead rather than dwell on her achievements. Still, she couldn't deny the sense of pride she felt whenever she walked through the office and saw the tangible results of her hard work. Employees greeted her warmly, sharing stories of personal growth and professional success. Some even thanked her directly, expressing gratitude for giving them a chance to shine. One afternoon, as Emma sat at her desk reviewing quarterly reports, A young intern approached her hesitantly. "Ms. Carter?" he asked, clutching a folded piece of paper in his hand. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" "Of course," Emma replied, gesturing for him to sit. "What's on your mind?" The intern hesitated before speaking. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done. Before you came along, I didn't think anyone cared about people like me. But now, well, I feel like I actually belong here. Like my voice matters." Emma smiled, touched by his sincerity. "Your voice does matter," she said firmly. "And don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. You're part of this team and your contributions are valuable. Never forget that." As the intern left, clutching the note he had written, a heartfelt letter of appreciation, Emma leaned back in her chair, reflecting on how far they'd come. It hadn't been easy, and there was still work to be done. But every challenge, every obstacle, had been worth it. Because now, Crestwood Innovations wasn't just a company, it was a community, and Emma knew that together they could achieve anything. Months had passed since Emma Carter stepped into her role as the official CEO of Crestwood Innovations, and the transformation she had envisioned was now a reality. The once toxic workplace culture had given way to an environment where collaboration thrived, creativity flourished, and employees felt valued for their contributions. What had started as a quiet rebellion against injustice had evolved into something far greater, a testament to the power of leadership with integrity. Emma's days were now filled with purpose. She spent mornings reviewing project updates, afternoons meeting with teams to brainstorm new ideas, and evenings reflecting on the progress they'd made. Her calendar was packed, but she always found time to connect with people at every level of the company. Whether it was congratulating an employee on completing a challenging assignment or offering guidance to someone struggling with self-doubt, Emma made sure everyone knew they mattered. It wasn't just about running a successful business. It was about building a legacy rooted in kindness and fairness. One of the most rewarding aspects of her journey was watching individuals grow into their roles. Take Rachel, for instance, the junior marketer who had been promoted to lead the creative team. Under Emma's mentorship, Rachel blossomed into a confident leader whose innovative campaigns earned rave reviews from clients. During one particularly memorable presentation, Rachel stood before the board of directors and delivered a pitch so compelling that even seasoned executives were impressed. As she wrapped up her talk, she turned to Emma and said, "None of this would have been possible without your belief in me. Thank you for seeing potential when no one else did." Moments like these reminded Emma why she had chosen this path. Every promotion, every success story, reinforced her belief that people were capable of extraordinary things when given the right opportunities and support. And yet, she never lost sight of the fact that her own journey hadn't been easy. The bullying, the humiliation, the countless moments of doubt, they were all part of the foundation upon which she now stood. In quieter moments, Emma often thought about her father. He had poured his heart and soul into building Crestwood Innovations, instilling values of hard work, honesty, and respect into every aspect of the company. When he passed away, leaving the business in her hands, Emma felt the weight of his legacy pressing down on her shoulders. At first, she worried she wouldn't live up to his expectations, but as she looked around the office, now buzzing with energy and positivity, she realized she had done more than honor his memory. She had taken his vision and expanded it, creating something even he might not have imagined possible. Her decision to work undercover for 3 months proved to be one of the smartest moves she ever made. By blending in with the employees, she gained insights that no report or survey could have provided. She saw firsthand how fear stifled innovation, how cliques divided teams, and how unchecked power corrupted leaders. These lessons shaped her approach to management, teaching her the importance of humility, empathy, and transparency. But perhaps the greatest lesson Emma learned was the value of patience. Change didn't happen overnight. It required persistence, resilience, and faith in the process. There were days when progress felt slow, when setbacks tested her resolve, and when doubts crept in. Yet through it all, Emma remained steadfast, trusting that her efforts would eventually bear fruit. And they did. in ways that exceeded her wildest dreams. As the year drew to a close, Crestwood Innovations celebrated its most successful quarter in over a decade. Revenue had skyrocketed, client retention rates were at an all-time high, and employee satisfaction surveys painted a picture of a thriving, harmonious workplace. To mark the occasion, Emma organized a company-wide gala, inviting everyone, from interns to senior managers, to join in the festivities. The event took place in a grand ballroom adorned with twinkling lights and elegant floral arrangements. Employees mingled freely, laughing and sharing stories as music played softly in the background. For many, it was the first time they had seen each other outside the confines of the office, and the atmosphere was electric with camaraderie. When it was time for speeches, Emma stepped onto the stage greeted by thunderous applause. She smiled warmly, taking a moment to soak in the scene before addressing the crowd. Tonight is a celebration, not just of our achievements, but of the incredible people who made them possible, she began, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. When I first walked into this office months ago, I'll admit I wasn't sure what to expect. I knew we had challenges ahead of us, obstacles that seemed insurmountable at times. But I also knew one thing for certain: the potential of this company was limitless if we worked together. She paused, scanning the room and locking eyes with familiar faces. Each of you has played a vital role in this journey, from the interns who bring fresh perspectives to the veterans who share their wisdom, from the dreamers who dare to think big to the doers who turn those dreams into reality. We are stronger because of our differences. Together, we've built something truly special. Her words resonated deeply, drawing nods of agreement and murmurs of appreciation from the audience. Tears glistened in some eyes, while others broke into wide grins. Emma concluded her speech by looking toward the future. This isn't the end of our story, it's only the beginning. There will be challenges ahead, yes, but I have no doubt we'll face them head-on, united as a team. Because that's who we are: resilient, resourceful, and determined. So let's raise a glass to the past, present, and future of Crestwood Innovations, and to each other. The room erupted in cheers as glasses clinked together in celebration. Later that evening, as Emma mingled with her colleagues, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This wasn't just a company anymore. It was a family she was proud to lead. In the weeks that followed, Emma continued to push boundaries, setting ambitious goals for the coming year. She introduced programs aimed at fostering diversity and inclusion, launched initiatives to give back to the community, and invested in professional development opportunities for employees. Her vision extended beyond profit margins. She wanted Crestwood Innovations to be a force for good in the world. And yet, despite her growing responsibilities, Emma never lost touch with the person she was beneath the title of CEO. She remained grounded, humble, and endlessly curious, a leader who led not from a pedestal but alongside her team. Her journey had taught her that true success wasn't measured by accolades or financial gains, but by the lives you touched along the way. On a crisp winter morning, as Emma sat in her office overlooking the bustling city below, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The road behind her had been long and winding, marked by trials and triumphs alike. But the road ahead stretched out infinitely, full of promise and possibility. Whatever lay in store, Emma knew one thing for certain: she was ready. Ready to lead, to inspire, and to continue making a difference one step at a time.